Hi, this is Sean Carter, the president and CEO of 40 Days for Life. Death of the tomboy. That is what we're going to talk about today. When I was growing up, which doesn't seem too long ago, I'm a millennial, but when I was growing up, we had tomboys, girls that were really good at sports, and they would play with the guys, and they were better than some of the guys, and it was a normal thing. At no point did we think that they should go get surgery and become a man. Likewise, we had a lot of men that were, they didn't like sports, but they were good artists, so they could play the piano or whatever. And at no point did we think that they should go and get surgery and become women. They themselves didn't feel like they were supposed to be women. I personally like While You Were Sleeping, which is a girly movie. It's a chick flick, as everybody says. Maybe that's offensive now. It's a chick flick. Steel Magnolias, great movie. Sleepless in Seattle, great movie. My wife gave me this pink shirt, and I wear pink. I have a pink tie that I wear every Easter, but at no point am I gonna go get surgery to become a girl because I like While You Were Sleeping. And this transgender madness has caused people to get all wrapped up into their own brain about who they are and what they're supposed to be. And maybe they're different because they're a girl and they're good at soccer. Maybe they're different because they're a boy and they have a great singing voice. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it would be sending us back in time as we are reminded by this great, wonderful clip from an American classic movie.
Batting fourth and playing second base, number 32, Marla Hooch. Girls can play ball! Batting fifth and playing left field, number 11, Shirley Baker. Batting sixth and playing first base, number 15, Helen Haley.
Look out, I might break it
Batting
down.
seventh, a shortstop, number 1, Ellen Sue Gutlander. Right field, number 17, Evelyn Gardner. And batting ninth, the pitch.
So there was a time when men made fun of women who played sports, and those women responded by being good at sports or proud that they were in sports or proud that they were a woman in sports. At no point did they deny their womanhood. And that's why this transgender movement is so dangerous, and we're going to connect it to abortion in a moment, because it's an attack on women and children. It's an attack on what it means to be a woman. If you haven't seen the documentary we've been promoting, and it's been everywhere, our friend Matt Walsh did a fantastic job with What is a Woman. If you haven't seen that at the Daily Wire, go see it. But we attack women and we attack children by forcing this garbage with this effort to have drag queens read children's books to kids, or dragging kids into gay bars where they're going to have drag queens dance. And that's just child abuse in a totally different vlog. But it's an attack on children, and it's an attack on women, just like abortion. And I want to point out three things that connect these issues, and they're very dangerous because they're very similar. One of the things that the transgender movement has in common with the pro-abortion movement is that their founder was insane. Their modern founder, Margaret Sanger, well documented. She was a eugenicist. She was a racist. She said, quote, we do not want word to get out that we want to weed out the Negro population. She did experiments on women from Latin America. She did all sorts of things to create the perfect race. She was crazy, and that's why Planned Parenthood had finally attempted to distance themselves in 2020 during all the wokeness, but in the end they wouldn't say that she was a racist. And if Margaret Sanger's not a racist, then nobody's a racist on earth. So Margaret Sanger was insane, and so was Dr. John Money. Google him at your own risk. Dr. John Money is really the guy who created gender identity, the idea that you're born with a sex, and you're a boy or you're a girl, and somehow your gender is a social construct. that we make you play with dolls because you're a girl, we make you play with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because you're a boy, and we created gender so you can just decide whatever you are. It has nothing to do with your sex. It's complete nonsense, and he was insane. He was pro pedophilia. He did a number of things that were very, very disturbing, including making this young man who had a botched circumcision. He used this young man as an experiment. And I want to give a couple of the details. In 1967, it was a baby boy named Bruce Reimer, and he was severely injured during a botched circumcision. So Dr. Money decided that he needed to have a sex change operation. So Bruce changed his name to Brenda, and he was raised as a girl named Brenda. And he went through life, and the supposed therapy that Dr. Money made Bruce go through was to perform sexual acts with his twin brother, who was Brian. And this started at the age of 6. So Dr. Money was not only pro-pedophilia, he directly coordinated this sexual child abuse. Now, he made a lot of money off of this, and he became famous for his gender research. And Brian was in the control group. But the experiment obviously was a disaster. And when Bruce, or Brenda, learned of the sex change, learned that he was a boy, and Dr. Money turned him into a girl, turned him into Brenda, he started going by the name David, just to complicate this. So then Brian, his twin brother, over time, as you would understand, he developed schizophrenia, he became insane, and he died of a drug overdose. 2 years later, Bruce, or David, who at one point was Brenda, took his own life and committed suicide. Dr. Money is the Margaret Sanger of the transgender movement. He is revered by being a brilliant person who was able to see that gender really frees people, and it allows them to sort of get in their own head and decide who they want to be on Tuesday or next Thursday. They can just switch, and they can switch through surgery. It is extremely dangerous, but it's obviously a grave evil. So that's one of the similarities. Margaret Sanger was nuts, and Dr. John Money was nuts. The second similarity is in the license that this gives us. Both are playing God. And when you look at the transgender movement and you hear what they say and what they tell us and what they try to force on us and force on our kids in our schools, it sounds a lot like Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So Casey v. Planned Parenthood, this is one of the sentences. This is where they have to come from to justify the killing of an innocent child, or certainly to justify just deciding, you know what? I'm a girl because I say I'm a girl. Here's the quote from Casey versus Planned Parenthood. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and of the mystery of human life. That's the quote. That's where we get this garbage. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence. So I'm the Easter Bunny. Of meaning, of the universe. In general, we just define what the universe is. That stop sign wasn't there, officer. Of the mystery of human life. It's absolute garbage. And that is why we have to combat it with prayer and fasting in our spiritual lives, but also with the truth. You know, this kind of garbage is why Roe is being overturned. This is why Sandra Day O'Connor said Roe was on a collision course with itself. That's why Ginsburg said Roe v. Wade was bad law, because it's built on all of this garbage that tells us that we can just construct our own existence of the universe and of our own selves. And certainly it would justify transgenderism, because reality is whatever you want it to be. You know, if I identify as a woman, I'm a woman. Go pound sand. And that is a very dangerous mentality, particularly when you have 16-year-olds We just returned from the 40 Days for Life Symposium in Germany, great event. We had European leaders, we had African leaders, and now they have a law in Germany that a 16-year-old can decide that he's a boy or he's a girl and the parents have no rights over him. And he can go get surgery. And at 16, somebody can go get surgery. It's absolutely dangerous and insane. And that's why that documentary, What is a Woman, I really want to encourage you to go watch it. It's very good. It's comical at parts, but it really highlights a lot of this. But I want to connect it to abortion because the third similarity that these two movements have that are very dangerous, and I think that there's two groups of the transgender people. They're the many that were abused and just they're super confused. Is the head of the chief psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins. He has this great quote. We'll put it on the screen. He's no longer chief of psychiatry, you can imagine. But he said that with all of this, they were collaborating with madness and said, quote, "Instead of studying the causes and natures of their mental misdirections, we have wasted scientific and technical resources and damaged our professional credibility by collaborating with madness rather than trying to study, cure, and ultimately prevent it." But he said that in 2016. That was considered the early days of the transgender movement. When you look back, it's been going on for decades with Dr. Money in the 60s, but with people actually becoming mainstream just a few years ago. And the difference is, yes, some people are abused, and you can look at all the research on that, and there's a lot of sexual abuse and confusion. But now a lot of them are just wrapped up in their own head, and it's this narcissistic view that, I get my own pronouns, you will call me what I want to be called, and I'm a woman, and you have to identify me as a woman, and that's it. It's a dictatorship. And we don't get to make up our own pronouns. We don't get to make up our own adjectives. We don't get to make up, our own prepositions. It's total nonsense. And yet everybody, knows that it's total nonsense, and it has the eggshell effect where everybody just doesn't want to deal with these poor people. But the similarities, the final similarity with abortion and the transgender movement is Roe v. Wade and the language that Planned Parenthood uses dehumanizes the unborn. It's a clump of cells, it's a blob of tissues, it's not really a baby. He or she will not grow up with good parents. We hear that a lot. His mom's on crack, his daddy's a rapist. All of this dehumanization, taking away the identity from the unborn boy or the unborn girl. We have to dehumanize them to make them easier to kill. And when I give a speech and I share a real story or a real occurrence, if I tell a story and I say, and the couple chose to abort their baby because you didn't know the gender, of course everybody's heartbroken. But there's a little bit of a difference when you do know the gender and you say, they decided to abort their baby girl, or they decided to abort their baby girl with Down syndrome, or they decided to abort their baby girl with Down syndrome and they even knew that she had blue eyes. All the details that you give about your physical being make you who you are, and they're part of your identity and not one to be ashamed of, but one that should be celebrated, and it breaks our heart. But when you remove that, as the transgender movement is doing, when you say, no, I'm not a boy or a girl, I'm non-binary, or I was a man and now I'm a woman, and I kind of look like a man, but I really look like a man that I'm dressed up as a woman, and all of the confusion and the woundedness that we see around this issue, they're dehumanizing themselves. And that is the difference. The similarity is both are dehumanized. They're trying, but one was a victim of it from the outside. Planned Parenthood, our legal system, dehumanizing the unborn. One, they're dehumanizing themselves. It's literally self-mutilation. And that is not only very sad, but it is very dangerous because it's very dangerous for them, but it's getting approval from corporate America and from the media and from many in our nation. Not everyone. I think most people think this is crazy. But that is a similarity with abortion, and abortion eventually became mainstream. And so we wanted to point this out. We did a podcast on this, so you can check that out, where we go in depth into Dr. John Money. Parental discretion advised for that podcast, but we wanted to educate people. But we also want to point out that this is not some issue that's separate. They require the same things: a crazy founder, a backward philosophy that says might makes right, and I can be God and I can define my own existence and I will do what I want. And the third, the dehumanization factor, that I am under no label. I submit to nothing and I can dehumanize myself. In the example of the transgender and certainly the unborn, who had no say at all, like most Holocaust or genocides around the world through the history of the world, the group being persecuted had no choice in being dehumanized. Here, society is confirming them dehumanizing themselves. And so this is a great time in this climate to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign. Applications will be open just a few days more, but you can lead a 40 Days for Life campaign. And it is such a great victory that Roe v. Wade is about to be overturned. It was one of the cornerstones of the sexual revolution, and it can end. And it will end, and that means that a lot of these other movements, particularly this transgender madness, where you see women screaming about Roe v. Wade saying women's rights, and the transgender people saying that's transphobic, there are no women. It's just the left is they're killing themselves. But we need to know that with truth, with joy, and with simple examples, people will have a change of heart on this issue, and they are having a change of heart on this issue. So be sure to go to 40daysforlife.com. You want to apply to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign. Also, when Roe is overturned, you were invited to your Rejoice and Resolve event at noon at your local abortion facility. Rejoice and resolve. We're going to rejoice at the end of Roe v. Wade. We're also going to make a resolution, because it's when the real work begins to end abortion at the local level. Go to the website for those details as well. God bless you.